everyone. I am glad to see some faces from yesterday as well. I want to come back to that initial question just so I can capture the last couple of thoughts coming in to if change is constant, why do we have such a hard time with it? And Valerie is sharing it's because we're always hoping that things won't change. So that is true. There's definitely underlying things that go with that, and we're going to explore some of those things today. And then Chrissy is also sharing initially change can take more time and work. Even it may make us more efficient in the long run. That's so true. And that's why as leaders, as managers, it's really important that we create a vision of what the new future looks like when we're going through change, as well as talking about if we don't change, what happens. We're going to talk more about that today in today's session. Just to give you an idea of what we are going to be covering, we're going to talk about the different types of change that occur in organizations. And we're also going to talk about some of the common responses, or I should say resistance to change that happens that we do need to overcome if we want to successfully navigate change. And then we're going to talk about some specific strategies and what we need to do to overcome these strategies and the emotional things that we go through when we have to go through change. All right, so we're going to just go ahead and start right off with talking about the types of change that we go through in organizations. So when we're going through change or we're trying to navigate change, the first thing that we need to do is understand the type of change we're trying to implement. The very first type of change is incremental. Anybody here familiar with what incremental changes? If you are, you can raise your hand to share verbally, or you can go ahead and type in chat. How would all of you describe what an incremental change is? So good, Bonnie, it's done in steps or milestones. Janice is saying slow and steady. Yashira is saying stages, phases. Great, Melissa. Elizabeth is saying adjusted over time, not all at once. Good, a bit at a time, Valerie. Excellent. So yeah, so that incremental change might not be a huge change, right? It's more a thing that you take a look at, and there's a series of steps that we create. We see that we know what the actual end is, and what we do is we create little steps to get to the ultimate goal. It can be a continuous change that happens over a long period of time. It could be, like, an example of this is that maybe we have a standard operating procedure and, you know what, it needs to be tweaked a little bit. Maybe we're adding in another step or two, or maybe we're just trying to evolve it to make it a little bit better. And so incrementally, we're going to, in stages, add to it. So it's very clear cut. There's a lot of variables when we're working through this sort of change that we can control. And there's a really clear pathway on how to get there as we are creating our plan and our steps. And just like you can see in the graphic here, it's pretty clear cut, right? I've got a series of steps, it's broken down. So it's like that analogy, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So we're breaking things down, compartmentalizing them, so it's easier to get through the change. The next type of change we have is transitional. Now, how would you all define or explain a transitional change? Go ahead and in chat and share. Or if you want to share verbally, you can take yourself off mute. How would you describe a transitional change? And don't be afraid if you're wrong. This is where you get it wrong. That's how we learn. So good, Jason. Yes, there definitely are steps in a transitional change. So good example. Yeah, so if you're moving to like an entirely new structure, so the transitional change here you recognize that we need to make a change, like we need to make a new course of action. And it's probably more significant than our incremental change. Bonnie is saying moving to one goal to another. Yes. Adjustment to a process. Good, Valerie. Tanya is sharing a change bringing larger impact because it impacts a process or a structure. Yeah, so a transitional change is definitely going to be much larger in scale, probably more significant, have a larger impact. Yashira is saying it's probably more of a change outside of our comfort zone. Yes. And if you wanted to like put a diagram to a transitional change, it would be that you have the goal in mind, right? You have a clear goal, you have a vision, you know where you want to go. You work backwards in terms of creating your steps. So like an incremental change, there are phases and steps that we go through, but there could be less variables that we have control over. And as you can see, it's not as clear, it's not as a clean change as the incremental changes. So we might, start moving in our path or in our steps, and then something happens, and then we kind of have to regroup and re-strategize, and then we get to the next step in there, and we're going towards our goal. However, there might be some other things that happen that we have to readjust. The last type of change is transformational. So how would transformational be different? What are your thoughts on that? In chat, verbally. Any takers? Oh, I see Renee typing. So yeah, so that a change in culture would absolutely be transformational, morphing, good, restructuring, a complete change of process or strategic plan. Excellent, Renee. Janice is saying something significantly alters the future of the organization. Yes. So here's the deal. With a transformational change, we don't actually know what the end looks like. So many of us have been working through this in the past 4 months, right, with the pandemic. We don't know what the future looks like. Whereas with incremental and transitional, there is a clear goal, there is a clear vision. Transformational, we don't have that. We don't necessarily navigate through transformational change. We more recognize that it's happening to us, and we just try to like hold on and survive what we're going through. So with transformational, it's not necessarily planned, and you're going through it, and it's more like hindsight. We can look back and say, oh yeah, that happened, but we didn't plan for it. It kind of happened to us. We didn't design it. So again, you've got to understand and identify what type of change is it that we're going through, and then also knowing that the 3 change phases. Or 3 change states. Is anyone aware of what the 3 change states are? Don't overthink it. If you know what they are, put them in chat. So real quickly, we've got our current state. So that is what's currently going on. Why do we even need to change? You're taking a look at, you're really assessing the situation, and you're saying, okay, here's our situation, here's the performance gap, or here's the behavior gap. This is what exists today. Then you have the transition state. And then the 3rd state is the future state. And that's really the vision. Where do you want to go? And so when I train change, I always train to look at your current state, assess what's going on, assess why you think there needs to be a change. Then go to your future state and think about, what does the new state look like? You always want to think about the end. You want to keep the end in mind. And again, if you're going through a transformational change, that's not as easy, but you want to always be thinking about the vision. that a really clear vision is super important when we're trying to navigate change, as well as bring people along with the change as well. That future state also helps us to plan that transitional state and all of the things that we need to do in between that. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take out that blank piece of paper that I told you that you're going to need. And I want you to take a pen and hold it in your dominant hand. So if you're a right-hander, you're going to be holding it in your right hand. And on the left side of the page, I want you to write your name, your first and your last name, down the left-hand side of the page 5 times. I'm just going to give you about 30 seconds to do that. So you are writing your first and last name down the left-hand side of a piece of paper in your dominant hand. You can go ahead and give me a thumbs up when you're done. Writing your name 5 times with your dominant hand. Excellent. Thank you for that, Renee. Thank you, Chrissy. Thumbs up when you're done. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Vicki. All right, next, we're going to switch hands. So I want you to go ahead and put your pen in your non-dominant hand now. And down the middle of this page, I want you to do the same thing. So you are signing your name, first and last, 5 times with your non-dominant hand. Give me a check or a thumbs up when you are done. I actually see some of you struggling with this. It's all good. I've had to do this before too. It's time to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And again, when you're done, just use that little emoticon, thumbs up, let me know. Thank you, Yashira. Thank you, Chrissy. Thank you, Valerie. Thanks, Renee and Melissa. I'm gonna give you about another 30 seconds to finish writing your name in your non-dominant hand. All right, now, on the right-hand side of that paper, I just go ahead and write your name 5 times, first and last. Just sign your name 5 times down that right side of the piece of paper. This activity is far more fun in person, but it definitely lands the plane on the purpose. And when you're done, go ahead and give me the smiley face. Thank you guys. Yashira, thank you for asking. I didn't clarify, did I? Thank you for that, Valerie. You can use whatever hand you want. I'm gonna give you all just another 30 seconds to sign your name down the right side. So you will have signed your name 15 times. Once on the left, sorry, 5 times on the left, 5 in the middle, 5 on the right. So here's the deal. I want you to go ahead in chat and write me if you went back to your dominant hand when you wrote on the right-hand side of the paper. So in chat, if you went back to the dominant hand, go ahead and write me in chat. Oh, I'm seeing a lot of me's come through. Lots of me's. Why? Why? So thank you, Yashira, for asking, first of all, because nobody else asked, right? Second of all, though, why did we switch to our dominant hand? Why did we keep it in our non-dominant hand? This is what we all go through when we're changing. So if you are a leader and you are trying to navigate change, know that your people going through the change are going to have the same exact feeling as you just did with signing your name, right? And signing your name can be kind of hard and using your non-dominant hand, but this is a really simple exercise just to demonstrate that change can be really hard for us, right? So you did it once with your dominant hand, felt easy, felt good. Then I asked you to go to your non-dominant hand and it felt awkward. Some of you, I could even see you kind of like contorting your body to get there. That's okay. Sometimes we have to contort our body, metaphorically, to go through change. And the more we go back to our old habits, the harder it's going to be for us to change. So I'm going to go ahead and open a poll right now. And what I want you to do is I want you to click all of the ones that you have actually experienced yourself or you have seen in terms of reasons why change fails. Let me go ahead and open that up for you. I would love for all of you just to, again, take a look at the reasons why change fails and select all of the ones that you've actually personally experienced or that you've seen happen. And you're selecting all of them. I'll give you about another 30 seconds. All right. So we've got 91% of the participants voted. So I'm going to go ahead and clear the poll right now, and I will share the results. So let's take a look. So according to John Kotter, who, if you're not familiar with John Kotter, he is a leading expert in change. He has created the 8-step change model, which I'm going to share with you at the end of today. And he came up with these reasons as to why change fails within organizations. So we're seeing 50% of you are saying allowing too much complacency. So people are just complying. They're not really bought into the change. Also, 50% are saying that you've seen or you've experienced failing to create a powerful guiding coalition. So that powerful guiding coalition is that initial team of people who are more like your change sponsors, who are really bought into the change and who are going to help you lead the change. Really important to have that guiding coalition. Then we've got 32% of us who are saying that we've underestimated the power of the vision. Listen, if we don't have a really clear vision or goal, people aren't going to want to follow us. We're creating even more uncertainty when we don't have a very clear vision. More than 70% of people are saying under communicating the vision. So when, as you all know on this call, when we are going through change, communication is probably the most important thing that we can do in terms of communicating up front and being really clear in terms of what we're communicating, and then having that ongoing communication throughout the entire process is crucial. Let's see, we've got about 45% saying permitting obstacles to block the new vision. So we have to be proactive in thinking about the barriers of the change. we want to be proactive to it. And then when we do come up against an obstacle that we didn't even think of, we need to make sure that we are taking action right away to overcome that obstacle. Where I'm also seeing about over 30% of you are saying feeling to create short-term wins. So critical in terms of figuring out milestones and celebrating the wins. Those wins give us momentum to keep going. Also, those wins help us to gain new popularity for the change so we can get more volunteers and change agents as well. And more than 30% is saying declaring victory too soon. Yeah, so even when you attain the change, we're not done there. Because what happens when we actually reach our goal? Sometimes people will fall back into old habits, right? So we need to make sure that that change is sticking and not celebrate too soon. And then 50% are saying neglecting to anchor the changes in the culture. So that is also significant. We need to make sure that as we're changing, we are doing things that actually support the change within our culture as well. So thanks for playing along with that poll with me. In terms of overcoming resistance, and I kind of just mentioned it with this last slide, resistance is real. We ourselves will demonstrate resistance to things that we're not either bought into or agreeing with. But here's the thing. The dissatisfaction of the current situation, if we are able to address that and acknowledge, sometimes I refer to it as the pain versus gain model. So we need to share with our people, number one, here's why we're changing. Here are the benefits of the change. And then also explicitly communicate, if we don't change, here's what could happen. A lot of times we don't do a really good enough job with that. So we need to really make sure we're communicating upfront the dissatisfaction with the current situation or the gap. The other thing that really helps us overcome this resistance is the vision of possibility, having a super clear goal and being able to communicate that really clearly and getting the right people on board up front. That also has to happen. And then our first steps. When you think about some of the things that have to happen initially, what are they? What are some of those initial things that have to happen if we are trying to implement change? You can go ahead and share in chat. So the question is, what are some of the things that we need to do from a leadership standpoint if we want to implement change? What are some of those things that we need to do in our first steps? Listen, absolutely. I'm going to pay you for that because that's going to give me a transition into our next slide, Elizabeth. Yes, Valerie, involve everyone. Love it. Help everyone understand the why of change. We don't spend enough time talking about the why. So we need to explain the why of the change, the benefits of the change, the WIFM. Is anyone familiar with that term, WIFM? What's in it for me? So we need to explain explicitly what's in it for our teams, our company, if we were to change. Developing the vision, absolutely, Chrissy. Communicating clearly, building the team, and communicating the vision. So before we even communicate the vision, we ourselves as the leader of the change need to establish that vision. We need to create really a bridge of here's where we are currently, here's where we want to be, how do we bridge, how do we get there? We need to work on that. It's not like fly by the seat of our pants. We need to spend some time really developing that vision and then thinking about how do we effectively communicate it. Yes, Betsy, absolutely. That is such an important characteristic right there as we're going through change, especially if we're leading incremental change or transitional change. It is so important to be transparent rather. When we are leading that transformational change, it is important to acknowledge that we don't know. Like, it's important to say, this is uncertain. We've got to acknowledge that elephant. So when we are able to clearly communicate the whys, when we have a really clear vision and we're able to clearly communicate that to everybody and get people on board and get their buy-in, and we're able to establish our team, those things ultimately help us overcome the resistance that we're going to get from some of our people. Now, there are some people that no matter what you do are just resistant. That's just their nature. We need to focus on the people that are going to help us achieve our goal and help us through the change. So many leaders spend most of their time trying to overcome and get people who are just resistant on their side. Yes, we need to do that, but I would also encourage you, focus your energy on the people that are going to help you. Now, the people that are trying to ultimately sabotage you, yes, we have to address that. Spend the bulk of your energy on getting the people who really believe in the change on your side, because they will also help to overcome some of that resistance as well. I do want to go back to what some of you mentioned in the chat though. In terms of creating this team and getting buy-in, the way we do that is by asking questions, by listening, by asking our teams, what do you need? What are your thoughts? So here, I'm going to bring up another poll, and I want you to be thinking about questions that maybe you've been asked by your leader when you've had to go through change, or questions that you've asked your team when you've had to bring them through change as well. And I want you to go ahead and you can click on all of those, that apply. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see, might not be that this poll was loaded, and that's okay. All right, so for these purposes, I will tell you these questions are actually in your handout, so make sure you print this handout afterwards, because there are about 20 questions that you can ask your team to make sure that, first of all, assess if there are any questions or what the buy-in is like. And then maybe from a leadership point of view, help us understand things that we weren't even thinking about. The thing to remember about this is that when people are going through, do you still see it, Valerie? Let me see if I can. All right. That should be off of your screen now. So the thing to remember is that when people go through change, they are going through two different levels of change. What they're going through, first they're going through the visible things, the real tangible things, right? They're processing that. But as they process this, they're also going through a lot of other things that we don't know about, the internal things, the emotional things that come up when we go through change. So during the pre-question to the webinar, when you were asked, what prevents us from changing? It's the fear. So this fear is that this underlying thing that happens. So we need to make sure that we're addressing it, because if we don't address and acknowledge the fear or these hidden things that are happening internally for people when they work for change, they're not going to overcome the resistance. They might comply, but comply is a lot different than being on board and being bought in. So I want to share with you now really this change transition curve that people go through when they are going through change. And the very first thing is denial. Denial is where we're like, we don't need to change. I don't know why we're changing anyway. Things are great the way they are, right? So as humans, we start here. Start through this whole I don't need the change. I don't understand why we need to be doing this change. As we continue to evolve, we move to the next phase, which is resistance. So this is where maybe we've been communicated to okay, well, we need to change and here's why. But as a human, we still don't see the need for the change. And now we're really digging our heels in. And we are resisting the change by maybe going back to old habits, like we did when we went back to our dominant hand and signing our name. We go back to the old ways of doing things. We begin to really question. We try to get people on our side of why the change shouldn't be done. As we evolve through this cycle, we go over to exploration. And you'll notice here that there's that chaos zone that happens. And I would say, I would even challenge this graph, because I think that the chaos zone happens between denial and resistance, but it can also happen between the resistance and the exploration. And as this chaos happens, we start to understand, oh, that's why we need to change. Okay. So in this exploration sort of phase, we start to understand why we need to change. We're getting a little bit more comfortable with the change. We're maybe a little bit more bought into the change. And then that fourth piece of this cycle is now we're committed. But again, during that chaos zone, during the transitions between the denial and the resistance stage, as well as bringing someone from resistance to exploration, as a leader, we've got some work to do. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to think about a change that you are going through right now. And I want you to think about where you are in this cycle or this transition curve. And in chat, go ahead and just share. So are you still in the denial? Like, I don't want to work from home, this will never work. Are you in the resistance stage where you're coming up with all of the excuses as why it's still not working? Are you in the exploration stage where you're like, you know what, maybe this could work. Maybe I'd be able to get a lot more laundry done if I just tried to stay at home, right? And I'm really loving that there are some of you that are in commitment stage, but I'm also loving that I'm seeing some of you saying that you're in the resistance stage, because again, with any change, you've got to identify where you are on this curve, on this cycle. And number one, that self-awareness is huge. So knowing, you know what, I'm in the resistance stage. A question I want all of you people who are still resisting, ask yourself why. Why are we resisting the change? Do we not see the benefits? Do we not see the benefits to the organization, to others, to ourselves? Do we not have a clear vision of the goal? What is it that we're really resisting? And think about yourself. What is it that you need to be able to move forward? We're all different. You're all going to have different things. We all have different fears. Is it just the fear of the unknown? Got it, Will. Great. I love also that I'm seeing some people that are in the exploration phase, because the exploration phase, when you're in the exploration phase, there definitely are a lot of benefits to the exploration phase. I would say watch your energy level when you're in the exploration phase, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a minute. I just want to get, Renee is saying you're in the chaos zone, went through a major acquisition of a division as COVID started. So there, you were dealing with multiple changes, right, Renee? And so yesterday when we were talking about resiliency, the more change and the more stress you're going through, the less resilient we're apt to be. So that's where we sometimes have to compartmentalize the changes when we're going through multiple. And Jill, you're still trying to sell the change. Okay, so Jill, if you're still working on selling the change, I want you to go back and I want you to look at the vision. And then from there, I want you to think about the rollout plan. And when I bring up John Kotter's 8-step model, that also might help you with selling the change as well. And Dina, you're absolutely right. The push-pull theory can definitely apply to here as well. So in terms of understanding the different stages that we go through, I'm going to bring up the 4 kind of quadrants, and I want you to think about, for those of you, and we've all been here, we've all been in this denial stage at one time or the other. I want you to think about when you're in the denial stage, what's really happening? What are you going to see? You can go ahead and put that in chat. What behaviors are you seeing in your employees, or if you've been in this stage, what are some of the behaviors that you have done? Yes, Elizabeth, so people are feeling anxious from it. Good. Good, Bonnie, you're saying all of the, we're hearing all of the reasons why it's not going to work. Conflict, the frustration, people are getting argumentative. They come across as challenging. Good, there's negativity here. Good, excellent. So yeah, all of them. You're also gonna see people in shock, like, I didn't realize we needed to change, or I didn't know it was so bad, right? So these are things to really be looking for, the behaviors that represent these expressions. Avoidance. So someone who is resist or in denial might just completely avoid their manager or conversations. Apathy. We might see a lot of people just being like, oh, whatever. A lot of withdrawal happens when we're denying something, as well as numbness, right? You just, when you're checking in with people, asking them how are they feeling, they're like, oh, I'm fine. You get that complacency. So things that you typically will hear when someone's in the denial stage is, this can't be happening. We can't be this. Why is it, or why is this happening to us right now? Or you might hear them say, not much will change here. Like, just give management a couple of weeks and this is all going to die down. Like, you might hear someone say something like that. You may have said that yourself. I know I have. Or, you know what, this change is really no big deal. If someone isn't acknowledging the significance or the impact of change, they might not necessarily really understand the change. And again, it depends on the situation. Or, this is nothing new. We're so used to change, right? This also could be one of those kind of cues for us to pick up on. Or, I don't really care. Like, it's not gonna impact me. So most likely change does have an impact. And as a side note, if we're a leader and we are making change in our one department, do not work in silos. We need to be thinking as an open systems thinker. When I say that, what do I mean by that? Open systems thinking or systems thinking. In chat, go ahead and share. What do I mean by open systems thinking when we are planning change within our department? You can take yourself off mute too if you'd rather speak. The question is, what do I mean by open system thinking? Good, Elizabeth. So how it impacts other departments, be open to other ideas. There might be another way. Yes, absolutely. So we always need to remain curious as well. Yes, Janice, the trickle effect. How does this impact others, other stakeholders? So open systems thinking, nicely done, everyone. So open systems thinking is, if I make this change here in this department, how does it impact other departments? Because there is going to be a ripple effect. So if I make this change over here in finance and I'm not thinking about production, it's absolutely most likely going to affect production, right? So I need to be talking to those people and really truly understanding, how is this one change in this area going to impact other areas of the company? So we're not working in silos. That was my side note. All right, so strategies for denial. And you don't necessarily have to jot these down. These are all listed for you in the handout. I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. But number one, we need to identify the reality of the situation. So don't pretend that people aren't in denial. They are. You're going to have a handful of them. You're not going to know until you talk to them. So it's really important that you are meeting with people and you're checking in with them, and that you are identifying the reality of the denial, and that you're acknowledging the change. Acknowledge that change can be hard. Acknowledge that there is some uncertainty here. Acknowledge you do not have all of the answers and you want these people to be a part of the change. Focus on the most important things that we need to be doing, and focus on your vision. And then, as some of you mentioned already, listening just to yourself, but even more importantly, listening to others, getting out there, asking questions, like getting the pulse of what's going on. For these people who are in this phase, it's super important just to be heard. And then share. Going back to that transparency comment, it's really important to share, where are we in the process? Here's where we are. Here's where we need to continue to go. That constant communication is really important to get people to the next level, all right? Because now we're out of denial, and now we're probably going to go to resistance. And so what are some of the things that we might see or hear when someone is resisting change? Go ahead and chat and share. Okay, good. So Elizabeth is saying, I'm not going to do that. Or they just get frozen or stuck. Elizabeth is also saying, I'm going to quit. Like, there you go. Like, I'm done. Totally resistant to the change. You might hear them say it's too complicated. That change is never going to work. We've done that before. Yes, this is where the sabotaging may start to begin, and we need to get a handle on that right away. They may try to rally others to their side, absolutely. And again, as we go through this curve, I want you to be thinking about instances where this may have shown up for you. And again, it's not bad because we're humans. We all go through these emotions and feelings. We need to just acknowledge where we're at and ask ourselves why. Betsy is saying, they might say, they don't know what they're doing. Those managers, they have no idea. This is where you're going to start hearing the complaints, like a lot of you have mentioned. So great job, Melissa. Errors, you might start to see that people's productivity starts to diminish here. Or maybe there's more of that lackadaisical attitude. So there's more errors across the board. They're getting like outright angry at this point. And you can see it. You can see it in their body language. You can see it in what they're verbally saying. Withdrawal will definitely happen. So withdrawal happens in the denial phase, and it's going to continue in the resistance stage as well, especially depending on your style. So for those of you who are familiar with DISC, I would say if you are an S style or a C style, you're going to see those people withdraw. These people are what's going to really just get complacent or withdraw. Let me just get Dina's comment. More errors are also tied to having to build the plane while flying it. Yeah, that happens too. So if you're moving through more of a transformational change, I think it's important to acknowledge that piece and saying, there's going to be mistakes along the way because of the uncertainty. I think we need to acknowledge that when you're going through transformational change. Elizabeth, DISC is a preference assessment that you can take that helps you to understand your own personal style in terms of the way you like to communicate, work, interact with others. It's pretty cool. I can give you some more information on it offline. You might also see people calling in more when they're resisting. And things that you might hear, I think you guys already hit them all though. So this will never work. Who needs this? I'm getting out. I'm not going to stay to see what the end is. They're going to fail. It's never going to work. They're never going to implement it. Nothing matters now. What's the use? What's the use in even trying? It's not fair. God, I hate that one. I hear that from my kids all the time. Like, it's just not fair. They can't do this to us. Well, it's happening. So as an employee, we either have two choices, right? Maybe three. We can leave, like some people do. And you know what? People have to do what's right for them. Or they can get on board. So again, these are some of the things that you might hear. So to overcome these resistant phases, number one, you have to be talking to your people. You need to understand where they at, and you need to recognize and acknowledge their emotions. And don't say to them, oh, don't feel that way. No, instead we say something like, you know what, it's It's completely normal that you're feeling this way. It's completely normal because, you know, there are a lot of uncertain things and change is hard. Acknowledge and validate where your people are at. Use humor. Like if you're a funny person or naturally funny, just use it. Because as we talked about yesterday, humor is a really important thing even for building resiliency as well as overcoming resistance. Like I know when I'm being resistant and my husband will say something that will make me like see my ridiculousness in the resistance. And I'm like, you know what? You're really right. So sometimes when you can just be real and authentic and use humor to bring light to the situation, that can go a long way. Also, just trying to find someone that you trust and confide in. Whether, you know, maybe you're the person going through resistance and you need to talk it out. That's really important. And then avoid those who make you feel worse. And what I mean by that is if you are the one working through resistance, check your brain food like we talked about yesterday, but try to keep with the people who can help you see the positive side of the change that you need to go through. Sharing information and then offering to give help to those who are feeling resistant, giving them advice, helping them to work through the resistance, and remembering that resistance, the denial and the resistance really have to do with that fear. So we need to figure out what are they really afraid of? And sometimes when we're helping people go through resistance, just asking that question sheds a lot of light. That next phase, so now we're kind of moving through the chaos and now we're at the exploration phase or piece of the curve. What are some of the things that you think you might be seeing here? Oh, Dina, I like what you were saying about resistance. Yes, there is that mentality about them versus us, right? Management versus us, the worker. So good, Elizabeth. We're seeing a lot more enthusiasm. We're seeing ideas. Excellent, Yoshira. Yes, there's more ideating and sharing of the ideas and brainstorming. Good, Jill. Yeah, so we're probably going to get a lot more questions. So people are going to be curious, right? And then Vicky is saying, yeah, so all right, I guess I might be a little bit on board. I see where the benefit of this change is happening. And yes, there's going to be a lot more open-mindedness here. A lot more curiosity happens here. So you're going to get a lot more creativity, a lot more enthusiasm and energy behind the change. You're going to see a few people when they get into this stage that they're going to start taking a little bit more risk. When you see people come into this phase, this is where we have to grab them and make them part of our volunteer change agent team, because their enthusiasm is going to help others who may still be resisting to jump on board. They're learning new skills. So here they might say something like, you know what, well, how are we going to do this? Like, what do we need to be able to get to the next step? Poor time management might happen here, and this is where you kind of have to protect your energy, especially for those of you who are finding yourself in the exploration right now with a change you're going through, because right now you have all these ideas coming, right? And maybe you're researching and you want to try all of these things. Protect yourself from just depleting your energy. So what I would recommend is, you know, brainstorm, write out all the things that are on your mind, and then prioritize. Like, what's going to give you your biggest impact within an appropriate amount of time, because you don't want to burn yourself out. And burnout can definitely happen during this exploration phase. And if we burn out here, we're not going to have the energy or the momentum to get us to the commitment phase, which we need to be at. So that's where that information overload can happen here as well. But there's a lot of hope here. There's a lot of hope for the future. You're going to get people really, you're going to start seeing behaviors and words that are much more future focused as well. So you might hear things like, well, if this is going to happen, what should I do next? What do I need to do? So here, well, I guess this might be an opportunity. This might be an opportunity for us to explore this situation, right? Or this is our chance to change it all. Like we've got this here, you know, and this phase right here is extremely important when we are trying to change a culture. because that can be, as many of you know, can be one of the hardest changes to implement. And, or, you know, what options are available to me? How can I help? That might be something else that we might say, or an employee might say as well. So strategies for this exploration phase is we need to view the situation from a different perspective. So here's where we need to kind of step out of ourselves, put ourselves in other people's shoes, and look just for different opportunities. Begin to imagine positive outcomes. Help people see, if you're the leader of this change, help people see the positive outcomes. And then take advantage of the enthusiasm like I just mentioned. So this is your time to get other people, when they're in this phase, this is the time to get them on board. Or if you find yourself in this phase, this is where we need to really just slow down, prioritize, and say, how can I really utilize this enthusiasm to get me my biggest impact? And then just sharing and encouraging others and taking action. Because when we take action, we are that much closer to getting into the commitment phase. So what are we seeing when someone is committed? What are some of the behaviors? In chat. Or if you want to speak so you're not hearing me the whole time, you can take yourself off mute. So they're very energized, they're participating, like they're actively involved, right? They're excited about it. They're positive about the project. You got it. They're saying like, what can I do? What can I help? And the more people you have in this phase, and the more those resistant people see these people switching over to commitment, the more it's going to help those people as well. Sharing with others, getting on board. Good. Excellent. All right. So real quickly, you're going to see a lot of cooperation here. You guys hit that on the head. They're very future focused. They're waiting for what's next, and they're really excited about the change. They're very optimistic. You're going to see productivity skyrocket at this point. There's going to be a lot more independence around this as well. So you can kind of, don't sit back and rest on your laurels here, but what you can do is appreciate all of the work that you've done up until now, because people are going to start working a lot more independently. And then the growth and the readiness to move forward, you know it's there. All right. So things you're going to say here, things you might say, or you might hear someone say is, I'm going to survive this. We're going to get through this. You know, we're going to get through this together, or how can we work on this together? That right there is showing you that there is some commitment. Don't forget those wins. Even if they're like minuscule, we still need to support and share those wins with everyone. And remember that wins are far more impactful when they range the entire organization versus just a group of people. So in order to work through this commitment phase, we just need to focus the energy where we can make the difference. So acting on issues that you can control. Don't waste your issues on things you can't control. Focus your attention and energy on what you can control. And here's the thing, if you are leading change right now, I encourage all of you after this session, well, I know you need to get to your next session, but after this session, write down, what are the things that I can control? What are the things that I can't control? List them out for yourself and let go of the things that you can't control. Increase your influence. So when you get those people on board, or you see more people getting over into the enthusiasm or the commitment phase, use that, leverage that, and stay positive. This is where your resiliency is going to be key, but we don't want to rest on our laurels either. Acknowledging accomplishments and keep adding to your skills. So just because you learn something new to help you get to this next phase, use that to continue the learning. So I did mention earlier about John Kotter's 8-step change model. We don't go through it here, but I want you to write it down as a reference. And the number one thing that he advocates for is, number one, create the sense of urgency, create the need and the opportunity for the change. And this is a cycle. All right, so just to wrap up the last couple of minutes together, what I would love for you to be thinking about is what's one thing that you are taking away just from this session that can help you either work through change yourself or lead change. Go ahead in the chat box and share. What's the one thing that you're going to be taking away or implementing right away to help you work through change? Resilience, good, Dina. And Dina, if you were on with me yesterday for the resiliency workshop, there's a handout and that it was recorded, so I would recommend going back to that to give you some tips on that. Clarifying and communicating the vision, communication, good. Waiting for some others to come through, communicating the sense of urgency. Yeah, so remember, when we are communicating the sense of urgency, be very, very explicit around the why. Identifying where the organization is and what it needs, what is important now, and what can wait, good. So we've got to identify and compartmentalize those things, good. Recognizing the feelings, yeah. So I love that you're adding that, Jason, because if we don't recognize feelings our own, so as a leader, you kind of have to check in with yourself to say, how do I feel about change, right? I love change. I move rather quickly through change, but as a leader, I need to recognize that most people don't do that. So again, having that awareness of yourself and others, super important. Staying committed to the change, overcoming the blocks. Awesome. So what I want to do now in the last minute that we have is if there are any remaining questions, you can go ahead and take yourself off mute. Thank you for that, Renee. Take yourself off of mute, or you can put your question in the chat box. If you have any other questions about how to navigate or lead change. There's something that maybe we didn't cover that you were hoping to cover, or if I went through something too quickly for you, let me know. Let's see, Dina. I will have someone reach out to you to let you know. I don't know specifically where to find the materials, but I will have someone reach out, Dina Gilbert. Oh, okay, I guess we're waiting for Chris. Are we waiting for Chris to share? Chris is like, damn it, they called me out. But that really wasn't me, it was Jason first, Chris. So I guess we are all awaiting your takeaway. Okay, Chris is saying he needs a new coworker, which I'm assuming right now is Jason. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for your participation. It was great to see some of you that I saw yesterday. If you have any other questions for me, you can always find me through EANE. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and good luck with the changes that you are trying to implement within your organization or just trying to get through. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.